Welcome to Worldview Tube's Washington Report on this January 28th, 2026. It's been a few days since we've had a show. We got some thick ice here on the roads, but we made it in today. And I'm joined now by my co-host, Jim Pfaff of the conservative Caucus.com. Jim, we've missed a lot. There's been a lot going on. Obviously, I think most people know, we don't have to cover much, is another ICE shooting in Minnesota with Alex Preddy. And there's been a lot of controversy around that. And it's led to now President Trump announcing that he has had talks with Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis and Governor Tim Walz. And some people are upset about that. Some people are happy about that. But now it seems like this morning, Jim, that the talks didn't go as well as they were portrayed because Jacob Frey is backing down on helping with deportations. And President Trump put this tweet out. Surprisingly, Mayor Jacob Frey just stated that Minneapolis does not and will not enforce federal immigration laws. This is after having a very good conversation with him. Could somebody in his inner sanctum please explain that this statement is a very serious violation of the law, that he is playing with fire? Well, Jacob Frey responded and said, the job of our police is to keep people safe, not enforce Fed immigration laws. I want them preventing homicides, not hunting down a working dad who contributes to MPLS and is from Ecuador. Jim, with all that, what do you say? I think Jacob Frey obviously is a idiot, but
yeah,
I didn't expect much anyways from their talks.
Well, we'll see. He's evil. Let me put it that way. He is playing with fire. Is it the duty of local police to enforce federal law? Well, in some cases, yes. You could get federal charges and have that are caused by some local police action. So that is just absolutely wrong. Now, there's no absolute obligation to do so. We have a separation, not only separation of powers in Washington, D.C., but states and localities are not in almost any way, well, in no way subject to the federal government, except that they are subject to our federal Constitution. But that said, I don't know precisely what Donald Trump is referring to, but I suspect he may be referring to the fact that there are other ways that Jacob Frey is breaking the law. Now, what he cannot do with his local police is impede federal operations where there is federal authority, and in this case, for ICE to arrest and deport illegal aliens. Now, we can talk about the political issue between, is it wise politically, and what the reaction of the public would be to arrest non-criminal illegals as opposed to only going after the criminal illegals. Well, there may be a political issue to that, but Donald Trump is duty-bound to deal with both of them by federal law. The purpose of ICE and CBP to stop things at the borders, the Border Patrol, ICE to enforce these laws internally. And there are clear laws on the books that ICE operates under. Jacob Frey does not have a right to impede that. And I believe he's breaking federal law in doing so. And in fact, there are some very clear federal laws, but there's another problem here. Jacob Frey's efforts are also part of a more global problem here in the United States, where there is, in my estimation, a criminal conspiracy taking place. And there have been a lot of people who have commented on this. It's not just me. There is money flowing to the organizations that have ramped up these ICE protests. These ICE protests don't only get violent, they're obstructive, purposefully so, not just in ICE officers, going about their duties in arresting these illegal aliens, but also in the fact that they are protesting outside of the hotels where ICE agents are. They are making noise. These ICE agents can find it hard to sleep at night. And this is being funded by people around the country, and I would estimate being coordinated with political actors like Jacob Frey and Tim Walz to encourage these things going forward and to facilitate them. You will notice that in Portland and Minnesota, for sure, the two biggest, loudest situations like this, that local police was not being helpful. Now, I will say recently, after the call with Tim Walz, the state police in Minnesota did go out and start to begin to help. We saw some video on that. But this is a criminal conspiracy taking place. This goes far beyond a political disagreement. And Jacob Frey is probably very closely tied in that criminal organization. Remember, for those who haven't seen our Washington Report lately, Cash Patel over the weekend stated that they know where the money is flowing into this. You'll remember that Cam Higbee had revealed on X, an X poster revealed on X that there was a Signal group chat that was working all the coordination. If there's any money connected to anybody within that or any money expended to facilitate the coordination in those groups, and I'm sure that there are other methods that are using, that's criminal. That is criminal conspiracy against federal law. And that should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is a serious issue. And Donald Trump's very right. It's very, very serious. Yeah. And it's insane what Jacob Frey is doing.
And it may not just be domestic money and domestic actors.
Oh, surely.
Involving, just like the book you have behind you, The Invisible Coup, where Peter Schweitzer is talking about Mexico using their consulates to organize and, basically militarize people to go out in the streets.
Well, and that's just Mexico in the book. Mm-hmm. He also documents a lot of what's going on from China. Yeah. And we also know that one of the funders of the organizations that are undertaking these efforts, we found this out more fully last year after the LA riots and then the No Kings protests, is a guy named Neville Singham who lives in China. He is an American citizen, but he's a billionaire who lives in China, and he is literally funding these efforts as well. Now, ostensibly, that's coming from his personal money, but when you take a look at more deeply and investigate, you may find out that there are direct connections to the CCP in China. The Communist Party in China may, and I think he does business with Communist China. That opens up some other very interesting doors as well, too. So, in my opinion, this should be invested to the fullest extent of the law. There should absolutely be aggressive efforts to get indictments and send people to jail for doing this. And it's one thing to take on the little actors on the streets, and there are many of those who absolutely should be arrested and indicted on criminal charges. But you got to go after the kingpins, and that may not just be the Neville Singhams of the world. It may be Alex Soros. It may be other Reid Hoffman of Netflix. He's put a lot of money into things. Does he have money in on this? There's a lot that can be done here to take these people on, and the Trump administration has got to do it immediately and aggressively. I'm not going to wait for the end of the year on this. So we got investigations to do. We've been knowing this has been going on for months now. Get you off your butts and do it now, because this is about saving our country.
Yeah, and Cash, if he says, we would know where the money's coming from, then do something about it. Yeah. And show us arrests. If you know where it's coming from, then go after them.
Listen, I'll just say this, and I'm going along with this, but I think it's really important. Cam Higbee, who, by the way, our national field director, Chad Caton, was with Cam in Ohio exposing Somali fraud. Cam Higbee was able to get very real evidence of these signal chats that were taking place. Those signal chats and money trails to people who are involved in those signal chats is an immediate grand jury investigation and quick indictment. You've got all the stuff there. Just what we know in the public eye should be enough to get these people indicted. And I'm getting very frustrated. I think if Pam Bondi and Cash Patel don't get off their butts on this quickly, I'm just going to lose faith. And I think that Trump voters are going to lose faith. They got to get going now, because then you're going to have 2 or 3 years of dealing with this legally. And then by that time, if we don't have a Republican president, and even maybe if we do, after Republicans in Congress just voted for the National Endowment for Democracy that is censorship central, they just gave them $300 million. I mean, this is the problem that we've got. Donald Trump is the guy who can get the things done through his administration to deal with these serious issues.
Yeah, and if we can't get to the people who are organizing this and the perpetrators arrested, then we can't go after the fraud, which President Trump said yesterday in the town hall that he thinks a lot of it is a big distraction to take away from the fraud that's taking place in Minnesota.
Let me interrupt here. It is entirely a distraction from that. I was just arguing the point at hand here. Let's just make this clear. That is one of the motivations for all these. But notice it's not happening all over the country. Like this wasn't, we had the LA riots last year and then the No Kings protests. You don't see this going nationwide. Why? This is another reason that Jacob Frey may be in big trouble. The reason that they're making it so bad in Minnesota is to hide the massive fraud that's taking place there. And the federal government, the DOJ, announced that there could be up to $9 billion of fraud. Multiply that by 5 to 10. That's just the beginning efforts. We know much of that too. Why are they not indicting in those areas right now? They have made arrests. They have made some small level indictments. Where are the big level indictments? Like it's all around us. The American people know this is going on. You've got to take action. And this is the time to do it, not for political purposes. This is the time to do it so the public will be behind you, notwithstanding what happens in 2026. You want the public behind you. You want them to be able to see what's really going on by exposing it through the rule of law. Get on it, Pam Bondi.
Yeah, and here's President Trump on that fact.
California, but so in Minnesota, they think it's $19 billion. If they think it's $19 billion, triple it or quadruple it. And if we catch a lot of this fraud, and I felt it for a long time, but now we know what's happening. And the answer is, yeah, there will be accountability. It's one of the little problems. You know, I happen to think, and I've said it from the beginning, that a lot of what's going on with respect to Minneapolis, you know, with what's happening with all the hoopla, is so people don't talk about.
You think it's a distraction?
I've said it from day one. It's a distraction because what you don't see is that we have hundreds of accountants from Todd and from all of the different people. We have hundreds of accountants going over everything that's happening, and we're finding fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud. And I think that they don't want that to happen. You're talking about $19 billion. Probably that's a minimal number. Now, you take that and you go to California. You think California is better? I would say California is worse. It's totally out of control. They don't know what they're doing out there. The governor is, I actually thought he was a pretty nice guy, but he has no clue what he's doing. Look at a railroad. He builds a railroad. It's like 20 times more expensive than it was supposed to be. And what they did to get down the cost, they made it shorter so it doesn't go to San Francisco.
Yeah, and we need to move on to California next if we can get this all wrapped up and solved in Minnesota.
Yeah, there have been some estimates out there. I don't know how these estimates were gotten to of $250 billion potentially of fraud in California alone. Now, I'm going to say this. That seems like a really high number. Like that's $250 billion, okay? But when you spread these efforts out in California, which has a budget I think it's about that size, when you spread that out over about 10 or more years of NGO activity happening in a big way in this country, in fact, actually further than that, maybe up to 15, nearly 20. Remember there was a big bailout of the states that came in the Recovery Act, Obama's Recovery Act? Back during his administration, shortly after the financial crisis, there were tens of billions of dollars that were just straight paid out to states who were going in the tank. It was absurd. So anyway, yeah, there's lots of fraud out there. It's breathtaking when you consider what it could be. I'm of the opinion that when Elon Musk said it could be up to $1 trillion of fraud, I think that's a low watermark. I think there's more than that.
Yeah. Well, we got to go to break. We got to go to break. We'll be back here in just a moment, and we have some more surprising clips from, especially from the Philadelphia DA. We'll get to that right after this break.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage, and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
You're watching Worldview Tube, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
All right, welcome back from the break. Next off, we have Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner. Listen to what he had to say today or yesterday.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are. In a country of 350 million, we outnumber them. If we have to hunt you down the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find your identities. We will find you. We will achieve justice. And this is a small.
All right, Jim. Well, with people talking like that, you're just asking for more chaos and more violence. When you're labelizing people as Nazis, what do you expect people to go do after that?
Well, and this has been happening for years now.
Yeah.
Called Donald Trump a Nazi. They've been calling all of us who support Donald Trump Nazis for a long period of time. And they've done it enough publicly that we know that they do that regularly. Just think about how that discussion happens privately between people that never comes out publicly. People tend to speak much worse about the people they're disgusted with privately than they do publicly. So this is a big issue. Larry Krasner, I have to tell you, Larry Krasner is incredibly corrupt. He is incredibly abusing and misusing the rule of law. He's in many, many ways ignoring it. He's one of the worst prosecutors. A Soros funded campaign that made him and continues him in the prosecutor role that he's in. He has very purposefully ignored going after not just criminal illegals, but criminals in general. It's one of the worst areas of the country in that regard. You consider Philadelphia and Baltimore, it's like drive up I-95 as quickly as you can past both cities. You just do not want to stop. It's really crazy. So, but when he's saying stuff like this, you have totally violated any rule of decorum in a proper society, period. That is gone. Do not say that you're going to call federal agents Nazis. I'm someone, by the way, who has for years, or had, I'm not on that same bandwagon anymore, but for years I was promoting criminal justice reform because there certainly were some bad things that had gotten built up in the police structure in this country that needed to be addressed. They're very mild ones compared to the things that guys like Krasner has been doing. That's not criminal justice reform. That's criminal. That is the opposite of criminal justice. But this is violent. And Jacob Frey's doing the same thing. He may not use the term Nazi quite as often, but he's been doing exactly the same thing in Minneapolis. The St. Paul mayor up there has been doing the same thing. Tim Walz has been doing this. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have been doing it. Joe Biden, assuming he wrote the post, Joe Biden just did this recently after this last death of an anti-ICE protester. So the Democrat Party's not an American party. They act in an evil manner. It's irredeemably bad in the leadership of the Democrat Party. And again, I'm not talking about Democrat voters, but of course we know that there are a lot of them on the streets that are this way too, and I object to them as well. But as a party structure, it is corrupt, it is not American, and their efforts are literally an attempt to overthrow the American government. And in that sense, I think it's insurrectionist. Maybe not criminally so, but certainly by motivation.
Yeah. Well, we talked about California fraud, and it looked like Dr. Oz was on an interview recently talking about the fraud going on in California with the illegals and the services that they are getting that not even the citizens are able to have. Watch this.
Let's talk about illegal immigrants. So Gavin Newsom was giving us a hard time for threatening the health insurance of illegal immigrants. Just to be very transparent, if you're on Medicare, you don't get free dental, you don't get free vision. You do if you're an illegal immigrant in California.
This is the infuriating
part. So anyway, so you got taxpayers in New Mexico, right, which is a blue state but a poor state, paying extra tax dollars to the federal government that are recycled back into LA to deal with the fraud that I'm talking about. So illegal immigrants, he's mad. We're horrible people. We're Republicans. You have no conscience. You have no heart. As soon as we made it clear we were no longer going to pay for illegal immigrants in California, what did he do? He took them off Med-Cal. Now, he didn't take them off, he took them up on the federal side. So in theory, only emergency services are going to get paid for illegal immigrants in California, which is a national law.
And is reasonable.
Reasonable. Now, we want babies delivered, car accident victims.
Yeah, of course.
Of course get health care, but not elective hernia surgery, cataracts. You have to be an American citizen who paid into the system to get these. So anyway, so we deal with this. Gavin says we're only going to pay for illegal immigrants through our own state-based system. We've audited him now. This data is coming out this week. We have now found over $1.5 billion of money spent wrongly. We've audited it. They're not even arguing. $1.5 billion from that California charged the federal government for illegal immigrants that they're not allowed to pay charges for. They have to pay for it themselves. He's not happy, but they're paying us because they know we're right. So you're going to see something happen very interesting in California. As soon as the money is being paid by California government officials, they're going to start getting more serious about this. And that's why it's so important for us to say, we're not into this anymore. I'm not going to let taxpayers in Alabama and Mississippi, New Mexico, our poorest states, pay for the fourth largest economy in the world.
Yeah, if they want to pay for that kind of stuff, let them use state funds, not federal funds, and then we'll see how long it goes.
It's my opinion that Medicaid is a program that we need to get rid of out of the federal government and let states deal with it. I mean, I don't even think we should be funding it through the federal government. The reduction in taxes that could potentially come by doing that would give all the states flexibility in their tax structures or their spending structures to do whatever they felt they needed to do. It's been a program abused in many, many ways for decades. Not because of what its intent is. Its intent is altruistic and good. There are people that really struggle with trying to get medical services, and the states could certainly figure out what they want to do with that. But as long as it's a federal program, there is the state of California has no right to utilize it to give any benefits of any sort to illegals. And in fact, we just passed in the big, beautiful bill last year a provision that says you can't do that, and yet they still do it. There are criminal violations involved, but certainly from a funding level, you got to yank it away from California and tell them you're on your own, folks. You better go figure it out. That's literally what I think needs to happen here. Because if you're not going to take these kinds of actions, you are going to have these problems continue. Mm-hmm. And California's the tip of the iceberg. California and Minnesota, they're the ones we're talking about. Tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot more where that came from. We're not even talking about New York. We're not talking about New Jersey. We're not talking about some of these. We're not talking about Pennsylvania or Ohio or Michigan even. All of these upper Midwest states, most of which are blue states or run from time to time by Democrats, there's a lot there that's a lot more than even California is doing. There's a whole bunch of money when you combine all those states together that's happening. Just look at what we're finding out in Maine. I don't know if people have been tracking what's been taking place in Maine with the Somali fraud, but this kind of fraud's up there too. So anyway, huge issue. This is only the beginning. Again, assuming the Trump administration stays aggressive. I don't want Dr. Oz out there making statements. Okay, do that. We got to find out. Take actions. This is what, if the Trump administration will continue to take actions, the American people will positively respond. That's the risk of politics, is short-term pain to get long-term gain. Donald Trump proved you can do that just by becoming president. Now, let's implement it through the midst of this administration.
Yep. Well, moving on, Marco Rubio was testifying before Congress this morning on Venezuela and maybe some other issues, but he was talking about the talks they're having with Venezuela, and it sounds like some pretty good talks. I didn't know what it was going to look like with the new president, because she was Maduro's vice president, right? So she's probably not any better than he is. But it sounds like they're having some positive talks. Let's hear what Marco had to say.
The first time in 20 years, we are having serious counter-narcotic talks with Venezuelan authorities about going after narcotics organizations. For the first time in 20 years, we are having serious conversations about eroding and eliminating the Iranian presence, the Chinese influence, the Russian presence as well. In fact, I would tell you that there are many elements there in Venezuela that welcome a return to establishing relations to the United States on multiple fronts. We are at the end talking about a Western country that has a long history of cooperation and work with the United States. At one time, Venezuela, pre-Chavez, was a very strong U.S. ally. And we hope to get back to that point. We're not there. This thing still is in its infancy. But I certainly think a lot of progress has been made in that regard. The first time...
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest issues that they need to work on is the China, Russia, Iran influence in Venezuela.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. Again, Monroe Doctrine. I think I'm very glad that Donald Trump decided to reassert the ideas behind the Monroe Doctrine. Do business in our hemisphere if you want, make economic trade relations of various sorts. We can try to do that. Don't try to undermine our economy in our region, or we're going to take you out, which China has specifically done, not just as it relates to Venezuela. They were doing that with Venezuela because they wanted Venezuelan oil for cheap. But it's also things like the Panama Canal. They had inched their way in there. Donald Trump is reasserting ourselves in our own region in a way that is very healthy and useful. I've grown to trust Marco Rubio's judgment. I mean, I've always felt he was a solid guy and personally very intelligent. He's done a really good job so far of taking on Donald Trump's agenda here. I always worry about the State Department, and that's going to be happening forever. Just listen to Mike Benz sometimes talk about what the State Department had been doing for years and potentially what they could be doing, although they got rid of a lot of bad apples. But if he is able to pull this off with Venezuela, never forget, there are like 8 to 10 million Venezuelans who are expatriated from the country, particularly during the Maduro regime, but from before that in the Hugo Chavez regime. Those people are ready to come back and make the country work. You just have to also get the right players in political position under the right political construct in terms of how you structure the government and the ability to have good elections. If that can happen in Venezuela, just look 10 years from now. It'll be an amazing place that people are going to want to invest in and be part of. And it could be a real anchor for freedom in South America, in addition to places like Chile and Argentina, amongst others, that have gone fully to the right and back to free market principles. Chile, for a long period of time, although it had a brief socialist government, that went away very big time recently. So you keep having that sort of thing there. If we can ever get Lula da Silva kicked out in Brazil, the renaissance in this part of the world will be amazing.
Yep. Well, we're all out of time for today. We'll be back with more updates, keep covering what's going on in Minnesota, California, and any other big news that happens. Go to theconservativecaucus.com or worldviewtube.com to watch our next show. Until then, take care.
You're watching Worldview Tube, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of